and welcome to this week's Italian Football Fancast. Well, kinda. It's on YouTube and it's a Google Plus Hangout, so it's all different. I'm Dov in video form with you as always, and I have two people from this week's Italian Football Fancast. We have Enzo Misuraka. Wave to everybody, Enzo. Say hi.
Hello, Dov. Here I am in all my glory.
No, don't just talk to me, Enzo. Talk to the people.
To the masses.
To the masses, exactly.
They are, well, I don't know if I'd say they're oil paintings, but I get to see us in the flesh.
You look like an oil painting with your lovely sepia background.
I did that to hide the wrinkles, so you can't see them now.
Exactly. We've also got Podrick Whelan as well, who was on the podcast earlier on in the week. Podrick, say hello as well.
Hello world. That's saluting to the world there for everyone. Hope
I see you've got a Genoa flag in the background there as well.
No, that's a lie. I'm not being accused of bias. No, absolutely not.
Good stuff. Right, and we also have Adriano Boyen, who's he wasn't on the podcast this week, but he features regularly, and he's one of the editors on Forza Italian Football as well. So, Adriano, say hello.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be called up from the reserves this week.
What can we do? Right, so the reason we're here is because we're going to talk about Juventus against Bayern Munich and obviously the exit from the Champions League tie. Overall, there was, 2 goals tonight, 4 goals on aggregate. Mandzukic and Pizarro scored twice tonight to put Juventus out of the competition. So we'll talk about that. If you do want to send us in any questions or anything like that, you can reach us on Twitter. The handle is @Serie A FFC. So if you do that, I'll check it and then we can ask the guys questions later on. So, Enzo, I'm going to start with you first because you're always highly controversial. You like to go against the grain and all that. What did you think about tonight's game, first off?
I don't think there was much controversy, Dov. They were appalling. They were absolutely rubbish. I was expecting a different Juventus, a faster Juventus, a more clinical Juventus, but we got, I don't know what we got. It was a terrible mess of a Serie A side that was trying to fly the flag for Italian football, and quite frankly, I was embarrassed.
Embarrassed? That's strong words, Enzo, strong words.
Well, strong words because the performance merited those kind of words. I wasn't happy with Conte's substitutions. I think he got them all wrong. We'll probably come to that at some point. But I think Bayern Munich were good value for their 2-0 win. And
obviously 4-0 overall. Adriano, he's embarrassed, shocked and everything else. Are you going to come to maybe Conte's defence a little bit, or are you of the same opinion?
No, I think if we want to talk about substitutions, I think Enzo's right to have a go at Conte, but I don't think they were embarrassing. I just think they were beaten by a better side. That's just what it comes down to. I think that Juve performed better than they did in the first leg because I think that was when they were maybe a bit embarrassing. They didn't show up in the first leg, and I think that conditioned their second leg because Bayern were able to just play their game, not really have to overexert themselves, and it was Juventus that had to go on the attack tonight. And despite trying and attempting to do so, they just weren't able to break Bayern down. And then finally, when Bayern scored the one away goal, the tie was over. So I don't think they were terrible, but I just think that they threw it all away in the first leg because I think they needed to score at least a goal away from home, and they weren't able to do so. And it was all uphill tonight from that.
Podrick, I'm going to come to you. Do you think Conte could have and maybe should have done anything different tonight? Obviously, they didn't have Lichtsteiner or Vidal, who were both suspended for the game. He started with Vucinic, who got a double at the weekend, Quagliarella as well. Do you think he could have done anything different?
No, Dov, I think the side that he played from the beginning of the game was the best side that he had. I think Quagliarella and Vucinic up front was the way to go. Paduin out wide obviously is not anywhere as close to being as good a player as Lichtsteiner, but still he was in, and same with Pogba in midfield. They were the 2 best players to come in for Lichtsteiner and Vidal, who were suspended. So I think Conte did everything he could with the side that he played from the start. They probably lacked a bit of intensity for most of the game, but the substitutions I think is where he got it wrong. Where he brought on Matri for Quagliarella, which was a straight swap, and I thought he could have probably went for it then, go 3-4-3, maybe see what happens, sacrifice one of the midfielders, but I think it was just the substitutions that let him down more than the starting team, and by that stage it was probably too late anyway. I think Bayern had the game wrapped up by that point, so I don't think you can lay too much of the blame with Antonio Conte tonight.
But Podrek, why take off Quagliarella, who was by far the best striker? Vucinic was absolutely not in the game at all today. I don't understand why he went down that road. It made no sense to me at all, especially when they needed goals. And after Mandzukic had scored, when they needed 4, I mean, the game was dead and buried. But it seemed like he'd given up already.
Yeah, well, I think that is what let him down tonight, Enzo, was the substitutions. I think the same. Thought when he brought Quagliarella off, I was so surprised that it was him that was going off. I thought he could probably have brought off Marquisio or Pogba, and just went with the 3 up front and played the 4 across the midfield. But instead, it was quite surprising to me. I thought Quagliarella was doing quite well tonight, and even when Matri came on, he didn't contribute in any way. Straight away, there was 2 long balls knocked towards him, and he didn't even challenge for either one of them. So that would have been disappointing for him. But at the same time, I think by that stage the game was probably gone, and even if he had left Quagliarella on the pitch, I still don't think that Juve were going to find enough goals to get past Bayern Munich tonight.
Do you think that this is maybe highlights a flaw in the way Juventus play? Because clearly they're the best team in Italy by far, and they basically steamroller every single side they came up against. In the Champions League this year, they've been, to be fair, they've been pretty good, like in the entire tournament, apart from probably the last 2 games they've played. But one thing that maybe a lot of people would have expected over the last 2 games is maybe a change in the style of play from them, which didn't come. I mean, Adriano's. Do you think that maybe Juventus could or don't have or could do with a plan B?
The difficult thing in that is that when you come up against a quality side like Bayern, it's difficult to. I think that Conte is confident in his plan A. It's worked for him the last almost 2 seasons, and he hasn't really had to ever try for a plan B. And so maybe going up against opposition like Bayern Munich's and the Borussia Dortmunds or the Barcelonas, maybe he'll get the experience of, well, our plan A isn't always going to work. Maybe we need to work on a plan B. I think that against Celtic when Juventus went through, they allowed Celtic to control the game, and that was a different approach than what you're used to seeing from Juventus. They're usually the team on the front foot, and it worked that night. But I think that had more to do with the lack of quality that Celtic have in their side. And so even if Juventus were allowing them to take the game to them, they were able to cope with that. I don't think they were planning on Bayern Munich to dominate the possession or boss the game like they did in the first leg and tonight. It just seemed as though Conte thought he could get by with his plan A, and when it was apparent that it wasn't going to work, I think he was caught out a little bit. There wasn't a player that he could bring on to change the style of the team, or maybe he wasn't willing to bring on a player to change the style and the formation of the team. And so I think maybe in the future, yeah.
Do you think, regardless of plan A and plan B, this game highlighted the weakness of the 2 or the 3 Juventus centre-backs? I thought Bonucci was terrible, especially for the first goal. I think they're getting found out now at the highest level, like they have been for Italy. But I think Bonucci and Barzagli are just average at best, and today they were, when they were needed, especially at the free kick. Where was Bonucci on Mandzukic? Where was he? Nowhere.
Well, I think Mandzukic, was, he gave all of the defenders problems just because his physicality. He might not be the best goal scorer, but just his sheer presence on the pitch and his ability to pressure the back line, it really gave him trouble, as you said. I just think that it comes down to the fact that in Serie A and over the last 1.5 years, Juve are used to being the team that, pushes forward, and it's the team that takes control of the game. And this 2-legged Champions League draw against Bayern Munich really highlighted the fact that when this back line gets put under pressure constantly, they can struggle. Bonucci is not the best defender. He might be great in terms of setting up the play from the defense, but he's not the best marker out there. And so I think that they might have been found out, but against quality players like Ribéry and Robin and Mandzukic, that can happen from time to time.
Well, there we go. What about the strikers, though? Do you think, Enzo, you went straight in there on the defence and basically highlighted them? I mean, do the strikers have anything to answer for? Because they didn't do anything over the two legs.
I think we found out Vucinic is not a Champions League striker of the highest order, but that's been found out today.
But Enzo, when he was at Roma, like you have to admit, when he was there, I thought he was one of Roma's better players when they were in the Champions League against.
Well, he was one of Roma's better players, Podrick, and he certainly has something to give in the early rounds. But I think when it comes to games like this, he's not a patch on the proper big name strikers. He's not good enough. And I've always been a firm believer that Juventus don't need this big name forward. I think they've done well, but that's been okay in the league. But I think now it's more than apparent that when it gets to Champions League status and you get into the quarterfinals and the semi-finals, they do desperately need an Edison Cavani, a Carlos Tevez, an Aguero, a Balotelli,
Fernando Llorente.
Well,
I think it'll help.
It can't be any worse than the three that played or the two that played tonight. So,
well, he could be the plan B next season that Adriano was talking about, I suppose, couldn't he? Because he is that kind of a target man that they don't really have in the side just now. So he's probably Matri, only much better in the air, and he's obviously a better finisher. So that could be a plan B.
A team. Why are we talking about plan B? This is Juventus, giants of world football, and we're talking about them as if they're forever going to be 1-0 down, 2-0 down. They need a plan B. What's that all about? Well, we can't have a team like that. Italy's finest team having to stress about a plan B. It's the other teams you'd be worrying about a plan B. Why didn't Bayern Munich have to worry about a plan B tonight?
Because plan A worked.
Exactly, and it worked twice. It worked the week before, and it's worked again. This kind of mentality is wrong. They should be the big team. Other clubs should be worried about Juventus, not the other way around.
I think that maybe Juventus, maybe want to be that team down the line, but I don't think that you'll find many people that argue with. They just aren't that team at the moment. So I mean, Bayern Munich, in my opinion, they're one of the top 4 sides in Europe by fact. I just think that Bayern Munich are further along in their process than Juventus are, and for Juventus to struggle against Bayern Munich, plan A or plan B or whatever, it's they struggle because they need to get this experience to get to where they want to be, maybe in a year or two down the line.
So how did they get there then? What did they need to do to improve? I mean, touched on maybe getting a striker in. Enzo clearly would just completely get rid of the back line and get a whole new one in. What about the goalkeeper? Because in the first leg, he made a mistake, and then in the second leg, he made a mistake.
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. I'm just saying. He's making mistakes. He's starting to creep into his game a little bit. I mean, is it time to get rid of him, get Marchetti in?
Who do you want, Abbiati?
Oh, now you're talking. Until now you're talking. Top class goalkeeper, Abbiati.
No, I don't think you should. I think they've got more pressing matters than Buffon.
I agree with you on that. I think that what tonight showed was, Matri and Quagliarella. I think more highly of Vucinic maybe than Enzo does. But I just think that you're not going to get very far when you have Matri and Quagliarella. Quagliarella, he had flashes of brilliance in the first 10 to 15 minutes in the second half, but realistically in the first half I didn't really notice him much out there. I think that they need to get a world-class striker, and more so than changing the defense or getting a new goalie. I think that those positions are pretty much set for the next year or two.
We got a tweet in from George Blanco, who says that Juventus are failures due to the lack of competition in Serie A. I asked the question, actually, sorry. Are Juventus failures because of the lack of competition? I mean, what does this say for Serie A in general? I mean, Milan got completely taken to bits by Barcelona in the previous round, and Juventus have essentially been taken to bits by Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals of the competition, obviously leaving no Italian teams left in the Champions League, 2 German teams, 2 Spanish teams. So in terms of Serie A, is that an issue for Juventus, the fact that nobody can
get taken to bits, Dov? Come on, let's be serious.
In the second leg they did.
Okay, the second leg. But no, I don't think that there's a competition is a problem. Look at Lazio, look at Napoli, look at Fiorentina, look at Milan. I was going to say Inter, but maybe another year. Not
now, Enzo, not now. Right, this is Juventus Champions League podcast.
I think it's not. I think that what it has been in terms of competition is because they've been out of the Champions League for so long that they're still in that kind of rebuilding phase. And whereas they've got to the point where they can start to dominate Italy, they're nowhere near the point where they can dominate Europe. That's the kind of next step. Look how long it's taken Barcelona. Look how long it's taken Real Madrid. It's all stuff that's, Man United now, maybe they've had their little moment, and that's now started to drop off. So Juventus are sort of just climbing that kind of wheel of success. They're sort of halfway up at the moment. I think, as we've spoken, they're going to need some more players to get at the top. But right now, it's not, for me, it's not a case of Serie A not strong enough. It's just that Juventus aren't quite strong enough. But they will get there eventually.
I don't know. I'm going to disagree a little bit with you there, Enzo. I think that the fact that it's 2 German sides and 2 Spanish sides in the semifinals, I think it shows that, England and maybe Italy are just a little notch below those 2 countries at the moment. I think that in terms of player development and quality and, star power, I think that Spain and Germany at the moment are just that much better than Italy. This isn't to say that, it's a competition problem. I just think that Italy overall is going through a little bit of a rebuilding phase. And you can see that because Juventus have they haven't clinched it yet, but the Scudetto is pretty much theirs in hand. And, there's still quite at 7 match days, I believe. So maybe they haven't faced as stiff competition as they did last season because, Milan, although you could say they threw the Scudetto away, they did have Zlatan Ibrahimovic. They did have, that old guard that was still looking for trophies. Whereas this year they struggled at the beginning, and although they've come back strong, they really haven't ever been in contention for the Scudetto. Napoli, they've had many opportunities to stay, a few points behind Juventus, and they just haven't been able to hang around. So I think the competition might not have been there this season, but it's not to say that it won't be there. I think the Serie A is just going through a little bit of a rebuilding phase.
It's interesting, actually, given we're talking about this, because I've not got the quotes exactly, but apparently Antonio Conte has just went on a big, long rant about the state of Italian football. And I'm guessing he's probably went along the same lines as the question we were asked, that he feels that because Italian football isn't strong enough, that Juventus aren't strong enough. Obviously, when I do have exactly what he said, I'll let you know. As well, if you do want to ask a question or say anything, then you can get us on Twitter at Serie A FFC, and I'll put it to the guys. But we've got one actually. We've got a question. There you go. This is how good we are. Do you think that the lack of stadium ownership and the fact that Italian teams have less money will mean that they'll always be second best to Spain, Germany, etc.? And that's from Jordan McGregor, of all people.
Very own. Yeah, well, that's one thing I was going to bring up when Adriano and Enzo were talking about that rebuilding phase, is that when you look at Serie A at the moment, there's so many teams that are putting their faith in younger players because they seem. I know we had the article last week on the website about how it's making a bit more of a profit than it was, the league in general, but teams just don't have the money. You saw like 2 of the biggest stars in the league with Zlatan and Thiago Silva both leaving last year. And if you look at a lot of the teams in Serie A, they are putting their faith in much younger players. So I think that maybe in a few years when these players have been playing in the league, maybe their clubs can push on into Europe, then you'll start to see the best of them. Because this year I think came too soon for Juventus, that obviously when you've been out of the competition for such a long time, it's hard to come straight back in. But I think when the likes of all your players like El Shaarawy in the league and other examples from other teams are all playing in the league consistently for a few years, I think you'll see Serie A come back much stronger, as it always has and probably always will in a few years with regards to the younger players. So hopefully it's just a matter of time before they start to mature.
So, Adriano, is this going to be a consistent thing then? We're going to see Italian teams who are in the Champions League in not the latter stages of the European competition, but the semi-latter stages, and then ultimately Italian football fans are going to be disappointed.
No, I don't think, no, because, we've seen in the past, even, Inter when they won in 2010, maybe they didn't have the best team on paper, but they were still very competitive. I just think that if, you can't deny the fact that Italian teams just can't compete at a financial level like the German teams or English or the Spanish teams. I mean, Bayern Munich has spent 48 million on Javi Martinez last summer. I don't think any Italian team would be able to spend that type of money on one single player. I just think they have to be a little more creative in how they approach things. Juventus, if we look at some of their star players, they didn't spend big money on those players. Barzagli was brought in, for very little from Wolfsburg. Pirlo was a free transfer. Paul Pogba was a free transfer. You don't have to spend big money to compete, but at the same time, if you have that money available, it's a plus. It'll help you to get fill a position that you might feel you need to fill. I just think, as I said, it's just a process that's going to need a little bit of time. And Juventus have already set down the marker by having their own stadium, and I think the other teams are looking to follow that what they did, but. Unfortunately, I just think that it's a reality at this point. The other teams just have more financial clout, and so they're able to, sign bigger players. Juventus, and along with Italy, as Podrick said, put more faith in the youth, and then maybe down the line things will change.
Enzo, is that something you agree with? Do you think things will change down the line?
Well, they will, but I mean, I don't think it's that gloomy. I mean, Milan weren't that far away. If you look at the Milan team, just talking about them for 5 minutes, they're not that far from being a top Champions League potential winning team. And even Juventus, the midfield is there. They just need to retweak maybe a player up front and a slightly more solid defence. They're close, and it doesn't need to spend £50 million on one player. I think if they look out there, there are defenders, even in Italy, who can step in. I have no doubt they can do a better job than Bonucci and Barzagli. I don't think it needs that big money. I think it needs what some of the teams have done is to be brave, trust in some of the youth element, give them the chance. Don't blackball them after one bad game or two bad games. The things that El Shaarawy have done is a man. Nobody could have predicted what he had done, but Milan fans must be over the moon for Allegri for having given them that opportunity. Otherwise, where would they be now? Probably nowhere near the position they are in the league. Look at Insigne at Napoli; he's not far from becoming a world-class player. So they're out there. It just needs the scouting network to be a bit more. A bit better, and not just to concentrate their efforts in Argentina and Brazil all the time.
So, just to sum up then, obviously Germany took the 4th Champions League spot off Italy, starting from this season. I'm guessing we're all going to say that looks to be pretty much deserved, given you've got 2 German teams in the semi-finals. Podrick, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. You can't argue when a team that didn't win the German league last season beat the best team in Italy, and I know that they're going to win. They did win the league last weekend, but coming into the Champions League this season, Borussia Dortmund were Germany's best side, and Bayern Munich were the team that beat Juve 4-0 comfortably on aggregate. And yeah, I think it is. You can't argue with it. It's deserved for Germany because they've got 2 teams in the semi-finals.
There we go. If anybody else doesn't have anything to add, I think that's us pretty much finished.
I just think that this isn't to say that Italy is never going to win the Champions League in the next 5 years. I just think that Germany, I think, are the linchpin, and they set the marker for what you have to do in terms of infrastructure and producing youth in order to compete in Europe. And I think that, as we've said, there are examples in Italy of teams that are taking that approach. It might have been, taking them a few years longer to get there, but I think that fans of the Italian game shouldn't be in a doomy state right now. That things are improving. I just think that it's going to take a little bit more time.
Indeed, I think I agree with you, Adriano. And obviously, we do congratulate Juventus for what was a pretty good Champions League run, and hopefully they'll do much better next season. Well, that's pretty much it for this first Google Hangout type thing. We might do some in the future. You never know. You might be lucky. If you want to get in touch with any of us, we're all on Twitter. Podrick, tell everybody your Twitter handle, so if they want to talk to you and tell you that you're talking rubbish, then they can do.
It's at pwhelan88, and no slagging about the general scarf. That's just Dov trying to get me in trouble.
I never said anything. Enzo, what's your Twitter handle, if you can remember it?
Hang on, I'll have to just check it.
Okay, Adriano, do yours, and then Enzo, you check yours.
You can find me at Boeing44. Yeah, talk to me about Juventus, Inter. Well, not so much Inter because that's another story, but definitely look me up on Twitter.
Enzo, right, remembered yours yet?
I've found it. It's Enzo M_FI.
There you go. Right, so that's everybody's Twitter. I'm Dov Shivoni, so you can check me out on there. If you don't already, go to the ForzaItalianFootball.com website, and you can read writings from all three of those guys, and sometimes from me as well. And if you want to listen to some more Italian football stuff, you've got the podcast that's related to the website as well, which goes out normally Monday or Tuesday every week. And then there's the sister podcast, the Club Focus podcast, which highlights one club and goes in depth on them once a week, and that's hosted by my good friend and colleague, Mr. Drew Farmer. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Let us know what you think about it. Leave comments in the bottom of the YouTube video and things like that. And we'll maybe see you in the very, very near future.